This is the RTS Clips, a clip based content playlist that captures experiences and stories of some of the most amazing and intellectual minds from different walks of life. Enjoy this particular clip, and if you like it, please share it with people around you. Now, without much ado, the guest is all yours.
So before you started your entrepreneurial journey and before you founded AllizHealth, you had been in the corporate sector for a while and you knew how the organization works, how the companies actually function on different levels. So my question to you is, what do you feel like? There must be certain advantages that the entrepreneur who has been in a corporate world beforehand and had been on the other side of the window gets certain advantages when he or she is starting their entrepreneurial journey. So I would like to know those advantages which you feel an entrepreneur has when they have a certain background of corporate, and are there actually any disadvantage that a person could get when due to his
Understood. Now, in my professional journey, before I started being an entrepreneur and all this, I worked with only two companies. One was a few $1 billion company. I joined Infosys and moved to US for about 10 years or so. Worked with a company called 89 US Healthcare through Infosys. So there I got a taste of a large corporate culture. And then after post my MBA, I worked with a slightly smaller firm, setting up their product division in the US and stuff. So I got a flair of the startup world, kind of small company. And from each of those two, I had something or the other to learn. Now, from a big corporate, you learn about how a company goes about building its culture. When you're employing 5,000, 10,000 people, there is a certain culture that you have built, and you need to, we get to know how they have gone about building that culture. Right. That's one. And secondly, when we're talking about a $15, $20 billion company, you also get to learn about what are the kind of processes they have in place, what are the kind of steps they have taken to go from, say, 0 to a 15 billion. Right. So you look at their growth trajectory, and there's a lot to learn. Similarly, when you look at the smaller company that I work with, where I was setting up pretty much their product division, there you get a different set of advantages where you now get to know how do you work yourself, or how do you work within those constraints with regards to budget, right? Constraints with regard to the manpower that you have, constraints with regard to how much luxury you can have with your customers, right? When you are with an IBM and a customer says, hey, I need this and that to be done, you can very well push back and say, this will be done only in 3 months' time. But when you are in a slightly smaller firm and a customer asks something, you have to treat that as urgently as it can. So both of these things. And then the other, when you're looking at a smaller company, the other thing that you also learn is how do you kind of encourage people to work with you, even without all the frills and the thrills of working in a large corporate. Right? How do you find the right talent who is more willing to work in a startup culture and give up a lot of things which he or she might otherwise get in a larger company? Right? So you get a flair of that as well, how to build a team with all these constraints. Right? So those are the advantages definitely you come with when you're then starting your own venture. On one hand, you know how you want to proceed, how you want to grow your company, the culture you want to set. On the other hand, you know how to work within those constraints. Right. Exactly. So those are the benefits, certainly, Kushagra. On the downside also, yes, this is by no means a template that if you have worked here, worked in these kind of settings, then definitely you would be a more successful entrepreneur. I don't think that is necessarily true. If that would have been a template, then everyone would have followed that. Right. Exactly. Because what happens on the negative side of it, Kushagra, is that when we have worked with these companies and then we start our own venture, you could say maybe we develop certain biases. Till the time we actually start our own venture, we develop biases with regards to how do we want to scale, how do we want to raise funds, what are the kind of people that I want to hire. We may not be aware of it all the time, but those biases get built in us, right? Okay. Now, in a large company, I might want to hire a lot of people who do not go against me or do not say no to me, right? Because my growth trajectory in a corporate depends on how many yes men I have, a bit of a psychophancy. Now, I might be inherently carrying that bias with my startup. When I look to recruit people in a startup, the startup world works completely differently, is that you need to hire people who are challenging you at every step. And that's what keeps you in check. But coming from a big company culture, I might start hiring people who are again yes man. Right? So one is that. that you come in with certain biases. The second could be also that maybe because of these experiences, you start to think within a certain framework, within a certain box, and you don't really push yourself outside of that box, outside the comfort zone, because you always fall back on your experience and say, look, where I was working, this is how they had done. So I'm going to do it in a similar way, right? Whereas the contexts are very different. As they very rightly say, Kushagra, is that when you are inside a bottle, you cannot read the label.
Exactly.
Right?
Wow.
And that's what happens. So maybe, right? So maybe people who are starting for the first time, they don't have any corporate experience or large, significant experience and launching their own ventures. Maybe the advantage they have is that they're starting from a very clean canvas, right? There's no biases, there is no box to kind of box their thoughts in. So maybe their creativity and ingenuity could be much more than someone who is coming in with a corporate experience. So there are these pros and cons, Kushagra. Again, I think it comes down to, am I able to just pick the ones that I feel are the good part of my experiences and then build on it? Or, am I carrying everything with me and, falling into a trap of being biased and so on? So it's a fine balance. There are definitely no right or wrong way to go about it. It's just, the way it is, right? Some of us first take a corporate life and then get into entrepreneurship. And I think it's becoming more and more fashionable these days to jump into entrepreneurship without experience. And that wasn't so much the case when we started 10 years back.